The Worm is a poem written by the poet Thomas Gisborne. Let's begin with the warm-up exercises. Question 1. Worms play a very important role in maintaining ecological balance. They are friends of farmers. Now, form groups and discuss the significance of worms in the above two roles. You have to write about the importance of worms in maintaining ecology. Okay, they are beneficial to the soil and plant growth. They convert large organic matter into rich humus, which make the soil fertile. And how are they friends of the farmers? The burrows are little, when they go through the soil, they make these little narrow holes created by earthworms, improves aeration and drainage of the soil. Aeration means the air content, improves the content of air in the soil. Thus, they help the farmers by loosening and aerating the soil. Question 2. Write down how the following creatures can be useful. Dragonflies eat mosquitoes and other insects, and so they help gardeners. This allows human beings to reduce the use of pesticides to kill the insects which the dragonflies eat. Spiders like to eat insects like roaches, aphids and moths. This keeps the population of these insects in check and helps to reduce the spread of diseases and destruction of crops. Ants feed on insects that attack gardens, lawns, and in the process of gathering food, they often pollinate flowers and distribute seeds. Fresh bees' honey is used in the treatment of eye diseases, throat infections, bronchial asthma, tuberculosis, hiccups, healing of wounds, ulcers, and so many other things. It is used as a nutritious, easily digestible food for weak people. Earthworms help to increase the amount of air and water that gets into the soil. When they eat, they leave behind castings that are a very valuable type of fertilizer. Question 3. Little creatures in nature can also be your teachers. Think and write what we can learn from the following. First one, bees use teamwork because honeybees, they cooperate in everything they do. Now, ants teach us the necessity to plan and look ahead. They are always looking ahead and collecting food for their seasons that they will not get food, like winter. Now, spiders teach us to do work daily because spiders are very hard workers. And caterpillars teach us the wisdom of constant change, you know, the life cycle of the caterpillar, how it is constantly changing. And then it becomes into this beautiful creature called the butterfly and offers us the promise of flying, of becoming someone more than what we think we can be. Question 4. Breeding worms to use them to convert organic waste into fertilizer is called vermiculture or vermicomposting. Find out more about vermiculture and how you can carry out the same in your garden or backyard to fertilize your plants at home. It is the scientific method of making compost by using earthworms which are commonly found living in soil. Vermiculture means worm farming. Now, let us recite the poem. Turn, turn thy hasty foot aside, nor crush that helpless worm. The frame thy scornful looks deride, required a God to form. The common Lord of all that move, from whom thy being flowed, a portion of his boundless love on that poor worm bestowed. The sun, the moon, the stars he made, to all his creatures free, and spreads o'er the earth the grassy blade, for worms as well as thee. Let them enjoy their little day, their lowly bliss received. O do not lightly take away the life thou canst not give. Now, The Worm is written by a poet named Thomas Gisborne, who was born on 31st October 1758. He was an English priest and poet. This poem tells us about the beauty of nature that also lies in small things and creatures. It is the story of nature seen through a worm's eye, and how ruthless or cruel we are to kill them without ourselves noticing it. In this poem, the poet brings out the emotions he has for little worms. He said we should take care not to step on them very carelessly and take away their lives. They may be tiny, but they also are God's creations, and no one has a right to take away another's life. These creatures, the worms, have a few days to live, so we should let them enjoy their lives and should give them the same freedom that we enjoy. I will now explain each verse. We begin with verse 1. Turn, turn thy hasty foot aside, nor crush that helpless worm. The frame thy scornful looks deride, required a God to form. The poet says to us human beings, move aside your foot which is moving so fast and carelessly. Avoid crushing that helpless worm. Do not be scornful. Do not have hatred for the creatures you cannot give life to just because they are little creatures. God gave them life. Meanings: haste here means hurried and careless. Scornful meaning filled with hate, and derived to express hate. The common Lord of all that move, from whom thy being flowed, a portion of his boundless love on that poor worm bestowed. The Lord, who is God of all creatures that have life and move, creatures big and small, the same God that gave you life as a gift, the very same God made worms too. And this is because of God's overflowing love for all creatures, whether it be you, me, or the tiny little worms. Thy being means your life, and bestowed means given as a gift. The sun, the moon, the stars he made, to all his creatures free, and spreads o'er the earth the grassy blade, for worms as well as thee. God not only made living creatures, he also made the universe, the sun, the moon, the stars, all celestial or heavenly objects. He made this as a gift for all his creatures. He spreads plants and blades of grass all over the earth. This again is for worms as well as us humans. The meaning of grassy blade means leaves or a blade of grass. The sun, the moon, the stars he made is a figure of speech called inversion. Now, when words are used in improper prose order for poetic effect, it is known as inversion. If you see this line here, the correct way of writing it in prose is that he made the sun, the moon and the stars. But we change it and exchange the order of the words for poetic effect. And that is called inversion. Let them enjoy their little day, their lowly bliss received. O do not lightly take away the life thou canst not give. So the poet tells us, let each creature, even the little ones, enjoy the simple pleasures given to them by the Almighty, by God. We do not have the right to take anything away from them, especially their lives, and that too by our careless attitude. We just see something like a worm or a small insect and we want to crush it immediately. Now, life is only given by God, and so think before you crush a life of any small being, however small. Some of the meanings: lowly, simple or humble; bliss, joy and pleasure. Now that you have a fair idea of the poem, let us move on to the workshop. Question 1. Read the poem aloud and you will find some outdated, olden type of words that we don't use in everyday language now. However, some writers or poets use them to impart or to give an old-fashioned flavor, a taste, old-fashioned taste to suit the background of their write-up. Now, such words are called archaic words. The poem we just finished, we saw the words like thee, thou, bestowed, canst not. Okay, so those are called archaic words and they are used, old-fashioned words used to give an old-fashioned look to the poem. Now give the modern words for archaic words from this poem. Thy meaning your, being meaning in this poem your life, bestowed means gifted, thee again means you, thou, you, and canst means can. Now, another part of this question is read any poem or sonnet by William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare was the father of English literature. And after reading his sonnet or poem, you pick out the archaic or old words and guess what they mean. Now, what is a sonnet? It is a poem that has 14 lines and follows a specific rhyme scheme. These sonnets are named after the poets who made them famous. I am giving you two examples of sonnets by William Shakespeare. You can take any one and pick out the archaic words and guess what they mean. So this is sonnet number 1, 2 and 3. Question 2. We have a figure of speech called apostrophe which runs through the poem, where the poet directly addresses someone who is absent or abstract, someone who is not there. Okay. Such a device is called a figure of speech or apostrophe. For example, the poet addresses in the very first line saying, turn, turn thy hasty foot aside. Who is he talking to? He is not talking to anybody specifically. It's an abstract person he is talking to. Someone who isn't there. And that figure of speech is called apostrophe. Now, pick out any two other lines from the poem that contain apostrophe. Example, same one I'm giving you here, turn, turn thy hasty foot aside. And second one, oh, do not lightly take away the life thou canst not give. The poet is telling us, but not telling anyone specifically. He's telling an abstract or absent person something, and that figure of speech is called apostrophe. Okay, now you have to find out one more line from the poem that contains apostrophe. Question 3. Think and answer in your own words in your notebook. First question, why does the poet appeal to us to respect the life of a worm? Now, the poet appeals to us to respect the life of a worm as the worm is a tiny creature who is God's creation. And we look at them with hatred and disgust. Question 2. Why do you think God created worms? What is their ecological importance? God created big and small creatures according to his plan. Even though worms are tiny, they are beneficial to the soil and plant growth. They convert organic matter into rich humus, making the soil fertile. Question 3. Live and let live is a famous proverb. Which lines from the poem support this proverb? First of all, live and let live means that we should live a free, happy life and allow others to do so too. Lines from the poem that represent a similar thought are, let them enjoy their little day, their lowly bliss received. O do not take away the life thou canst not give. That is the fourth verse of the poem. The last question, does the poem urge us to protect only worms? What is the general message conveyed through this poem? This poem urges us to protect worms and other living tiny creatures too. The general message conveyed by this poem is that we should live and let live. We cannot give anyone life, so we don't have the right to take a life. Only God has that right. Therefore, we should respect all creatures, big and small. The next question from the library or internet, other poems composed on living creatures. There are other poems, find them and try to understand the message in each of them. I have found out that these two poems, they are talking about living creatures. You can take one of them and read them. Question 5. Even small things in nature play a big role. So, protect nature. The whole lesson and all your warming up exercises are about that. Protect nature. Frame some slogans based on the above topic. Slogans are catchy words like, put together like honesty is the best policy. Okay? Or, save the girl child. Something that, is very catchy and going on at that time, topical. So you have to frame some slogans based on protect nature. I have done one for you. You do two more. Be mature, save nature. Okay, apart from that, you have to draft a short speech on the above topic which you could give at your school assembly. And you have to use the following steps while drafting. Greeting, okay, salutation, introduction of self, introduction of the topic, what is the body or the content of the speech, conclusion, and an expression of gratitude to the audience. So all these 7 points have to be included in your speech. Now, I have given you a kind of an example. Look at these points here and you can write your own. Now, since it is a school assembly, your greeting, your salutation, the people you talk to in the speech, and to introduce yourself, I have given you in this 2-3 lines here. Good morning, Reverend Father Principal, teachers, and my dear friends. We always go from the person who is most important to least important. I don't mean important, meaning uh, respect-wise. I am Asha Singh from class 9. Here you have introduced yourself and you are introducing the topic. Topic I am going to speak on is protect nature. Now you introduce the topic, like give a few points on the importance of nature, the biotic and abiotic, that is living and non-living factors of nature and how important they are. Then you come to the content of your speech or the body, like how we are destroying nature and the consequences of that. And finally, your conclusion. You can write a few things about what you can do to protect nature. And then you ask the audience for help in protecting nature and thank them for listening. The next question, paraphrase the poem in your own simple language. Write it down in your notebook. Now, paraphrase meaning writing the same thing in your own words, rewording that line in the poem in your own words. Now, I have taken the first verse of the poem and done the paraphrase for you, where you get an idea of how you can reword and then you rephrase the poem or paraphrase it line by line in your own words. Turn thy hasty foot aside. Move your careless foot away. In your own words, you can write your own meaning as long as it is the correct meaning. Now crush that helpless worm. Do not trample on that worm who can't move away. The frame thy scornful looks deride. Don't look at the worms with hatred. Required a God to form. They were created by God, or only God can create them. Similarly, you take the remaining 3 verses of the poem and line by line you write your own meaning of what you have understood of the poem and complete the paraphrase. The next question is to frame a point-wise analysis of the poem, The Worm, and you have to use the following points. First one, the poem and poet. The poem is The Worm by the poet Thomas Gisborne. Second point, the theme. The theme of this poem is all creatures, tiny or large, should be equally respected. All creatures are created by God and God bestows His love equally on all of us, including the small worm. Hence, we must respect every creature and never take away a life that we cannot give. The tone of the poem is serious and thought-provoking. The structure and stanzas, structure of 4 lines each stanza, and they are short lines. The rhyme and rhythm. Now the rhyme scheme of the poem is AB, AB or CD, CD and so on. The first and the last words of the first and third line and the second and fourth line of every stanza, they rhyme. And hence we get the rhyme scheme AB, AB. It has a smooth rhythm. The second and the fourth words are a little different because the rhyming words, they are not really rhyming words, but we can say that the rhyme scheme of the poem is AB, AB. Language and imagery, as you know, it is archaic words or archaic language and there is no imagery. The figures of speech, as we discussed before, apostrophe, calling out to absent abstract things, and inversion is inverting or exchanging the prose order for more poetic effect.